I like to view my approach to work as being like, here I am, here's what I do, and very, very invitational in that it is exclusive to no one. Connection and meaning and fulfillment and searching for purpose, like that really resonates with something within me that I'm feeling right now. And irrelevant of different belief systems that might be in place or that the person might hold, there's something like human to human that they connect with in that. That's how I approach it.
Whatever language is being used, in your experience, it's got value in the spiritual development or personal development conversation, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, very well put.
Welcome to the Spirituality in Leadership podcast, hosted by Andrew Cohn. Andrew is a trusted counselor, coach, and consultant who works with leaders and teams to increase productivity and fulfillment in the workplace. If you'd like to connect with Andrew about individual or team coaching, leadership workshops, or team alignment, please go to www.lighthouseteams.com. Enjoy the podcast.
In this episode of the podcast, I speak with Rebecca Wilson. She is a mindfulness teacher and coach based in Ottawa, Canada. She talks about her personal story, what drove her into this space of learning and growth, particularly with a parenting dimension of her identity. She's obviously a strong believer in what she does with respect to meditation, but really connects it to leadership in very practical ways, talking about how meditation offers a pathway to greater clarity, personal leadership, and some very practical skills related to leadership that she teaches and models. And it's a really practical, simple, lovely conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome back to the Spirituality and Leadership podcast. I'm Andrew Cohn, and with me today is Rebecca Wilson, checking in from across the border in Ottawa, Canada. Rebecca is an executive coach, mindfulness teacher. She's the founder of Arborvida Conscious Leadership, which I'd love for you to talk about. And her work is coaching, consulting, teaching. I will let you describe it and its connection to spirituality in leadership as you see it. But first, Rebecca, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew. It's so nice to be with you today. I'm so excited for this chat.
Absolutely. You know, we haven't known each other too long, but I remember when we connected a few months ago and you talked about your interest in this topic and you had seen the podcast. So perhaps that's a good place for us to start is what brings you to this topic? What triggers your interest in this conversation? And then, of course, I have a bunch of questions to ask you, but what brought you here?
Yes. So when I first saw information about your podcast, I came across it on LinkedIn. I just saw the word spirituality and leadership. And my first thought was like, oh, I'm so glad someone is just out loud saying spirituality in leadership. Because since I started doing this work with leaders, I've always believed that the work that I'm doing is really spiritual development work, but never so much outwardly discussed it in that way because of all the associations that people have with the language of spirituality, right? The religious affiliations, the dogmatic associations. And I think because of that, we leave spirituality out of the conversation often. And yet it's so fundamental to our experience of work and to what it is to lead effectively, right? So yeah, from my perspective, spirituality and leadership is all about fulfillment and how we make meaning of our experience and our sense of connection to ourselves, to life in general. And that's really where I come from when it comes to leadership development work, is starting there in that place of fulfillment, meaning, connection, that inside out approach to leadership development. So, yeah, when I found out you were having conversations on this topic, I was really inspired by it and wanted to connect and just learn more about what you were up to, and um, enjoyed listening into episodes of the podcast, and was so honored to be invited to participate in it.
Well, of course, and I would love to hear your take on this. I mean, I appreciate. So, if what I'm hearing is that for you, it's really fundamental to talk about issues of meaning and fulfillment. When you're talking about leadership, and professional development, personal development, spiritual development, to the extent that those are overlapping, which in my belief they absolutely are.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear the concern is my word, but I think it's an accurate word. The concern that we have about talking about things spiritual and the dogma or potentially excluding language that can come from that, insider, outsider, oh, my church, not your church, all of that baggage. And that's been a regular theme on some of these podcast conversations, is how do we bring how do we bring the value of this topic without bringing the baggage of this topic? And I'd love to hear, maybe that would be a place to open up. Like, how do you introduce this in your work? And of course, this would be a great way to talk a little bit about your work and what you do, because you're no longer in the strategy world. You're now in the developing people world. How do you talk about it in your work in ways that are inviting, inclusive, meaningful, useful, practical, without the baggage?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what I've found is that the folks I work with, the folks who I encounter, often have their own experiences of spirituality, whatever that means to them. And some of the ways that I come at this, and I find that what I'm doing is I'm talking about what I talk about. I'm talking about things like purpose. I'm talking about things like fulfillment, things like connection. And also I'm talking about some of the symptoms that come up when we lack a sense of those things in our work, right? And it's almost like I'm putting out this like signal that people who are in different places of their journey will see and hear and resonate with. And I like to view my approach to work as being like, here I am, here's what I do, and very, very invitational in that it is exclusive to no one. And yet the folks who are, I think, aligned with it, who are ready for it, who are longing for it in some way, almost are drawn towards it because they feel something within themselves that's resonating with this message. That like, oh, yeah, this story Rebecca shared about this experience that was really a very much just an experience about connection and meaning and fulfillment and searching for purpose. Like that really resonates with something within me that I'm feeling right now. And irrelevant of, the different belief systems that might be in place or that the person might hold, there's something like human to human that they connect with in that. So that's how I approach it. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't always use the language of spirituality either for that reason. I speak of experience. I share stories, and sometimes that resonates with someone right where they are on their journey, and it just works.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what I hear is there's a practicality about this. There's not there's no need to label. There's no need to, it would be almost as if someone's talking about a really fulfilling experience, to get tied down to say, well, wait, do you mean happiness or joy? And it would be like, and maybe there is a subtle difference, and maybe people can talk about that, et cetera. But to really spend a lot of energy on that, to me, is missing the bigger point, right? It's something we want to follow, presumably, and then you can go from there in the way you coach people and work with people. But the label isn't particularly important. And the other piece that I'm hearing is, as you said, invitational. This isn't a forced thing. This isn't some manipulative, I've got to get this person to be talking about God by the end of this call. It's like, no. It may or may not be something that's current for them or relevant or useful. But if it is, in whatever language is being used, in your experience, it's got value in the spiritual development or personal development conversation, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, very well put.
Yeah, beautiful. So could you give an example of the type of work you do with people and how this might come into the conversation, or a type of a story you might share?
Yes. So a lot of the work that I do is work of supporting people who are really working in challenging roles, right? Like the roles that kind of demand a lot of the person within sectors and contexts and organizational structures that are, quite stress inducing, perhaps. And a lot of my clients are really caring, compassionate people. And so some of the context within which I work is really around helping people reconnect with that source of inspiration and aliveness within them when they start to feel like that flame is kind of like just barely flickering because they're so busy running from thing to thing, challenge to challenge. So, giving them through either a retreat or through coaching work, offering them a space where they're kind of quieting the noise of all the demands of life and practicing slowing down and reconnecting with what's true within them, what inspires them about the work that they do, how they derive meaning from the challenges that they encounter. And yeah, all of that is really from my perspective, work of spiritual development, right? And the value that it offers is helping people, step back into the reality of their day-to-day work and their lives from a more centered place, from a place of like, this is who I am. This is what my intention is for what I want to bring into this environment, this organization, this world through the work that I do. And to really be leading from that inside out place rather than being, at the effect of everything that's constantly coming up and then feeling like they're inwardly a bit depleted.
Beautiful. I'd love to ask you for an example, confidentiality, of course, respected, of a typical thing and what you might discuss and what the impact of it would be, for sure. And while you're thinking about that, I also want to acknowledge that I've so often heard from my friends in Canada about how crazy work obsessed Americans are and how stressed out Americans are with their work. So apparently that's bled over to north of the border as well, and with your overworked, stressed out clients, which of course is everywhere, not just in my country, but everywhere. And I'm partially joking and partially just nodding at the reality of the world we live in. People work very hard, and we get very caught up and swept up into. We all do. My hand is raised when I talk about this too. And there's times where we need to do exactly what you're discussing. But is there an example that you could share and walk us through what a mindset shift or a behavior shift or a skill development might look like to support someone in this situation?
Yes. Yeah. So right away, I'm thinking of a client I worked with who I just adore. She the leader within a not-for-profit organization, getting closer to retirement. Just a superstar performer, very high achieving, and also so deeply caring about the people she serves and the mission she serves. And she was exhausted. She was like approaching a point of burnout, asking questions of, do I take a leave of absence? Do I stay within the organization and kind of ride this out? And initially in the work that I do as a coach, clients often come in looking for solutions that are, help me with delegation, help me with prioritization, help me with these things that are very like clean and skill-based and tool-based approaches to, get me out of the situation that I'm in. And again, everything I offer is invitational. So the beauty of this client is that she was so courageous in going all in on trying something different, which I give her full credit for. And because of that, we were able to approach the challenges she was facing really differently and to practice for her slowing down and checking in with herself about like what the real emotions were that were at play as well underneath the exhaustion, the things that were perpetuating the cycles as well beyond the system itself, but things within her around her beliefs, her sense of identity and how that was coming into her work. And we also were able to have some beautiful conversations about legacy and reconnecting. Although this person was working in a highly mission-driven context, working directly with people whose lives she was positively impacting, she had lost touch with that place within herself that really knew why she did what she did. So coming home to that and slowing down and going inward allowed her to reawaken this like joy for the work that she did. And again, just like kind of reignited this flame that allowed her to step back into her role. We didn't talk so much about priorities and workload and things like that, but she became more clear on what she wanted to prioritize and where she wanted to place her focus, and gained this better understanding of the things that stopped her from saying no to certain things and saying yes to the things that weren't actually aligned. And found that sense of connection with purpose and meaning was strong enough to overcome some of the tendencies that were getting in the way of her being connected to that. The tendencies of taking on too much, the tendencies of not wanting to maybe delegate, things like that. So it was a beautiful experience with this particular client, but really, again, I give her credit for her willingness to go there, because it's hard to trust when you're like desperate for a solution to a challenging situation. It's hard to trust that the answer is to slow down and tune in to yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. I appreciate that challenge. I know that's true for me, and it's definitely been true for some of my clients as well. And I appreciate the simplicity and the depth of this notion of coming home to her purpose, as I heard you say. And yeah, definitely an acknowledgement of the courage it takes to be willing to, like when you're wanting a tool, and you're in a conversation about your feelings and your purpose and your mindsets and what fulfills you and et cetera. That could be difficult when it's like, just give me the tool.
Yeah.
So good for her willingness to go there. And that's a beautiful example, as you describe that, of inside out leadership, right? Because it's not looking for, there's a presenting issue. There's the tip of the iceberg, the delegation, whatever it might be. But then there's what's really underneath that's driving the behavioral situation, whether it's a behavior that's missing the mark or something like that. Something's being missed. So before, or perhaps instead, of focusing on that behavioral shift, let's consider what's going on underneath, so that as she approaches the behavior, she approaches it differently. That's what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So it's beyond it's looking at the symptoms and then like going to the root of what's created this. So it's really where I love to be as a coach, is to go into the depth that, below the surface, and to get curious there. And again, always with that permission, with that invitational attitude. But it's so profound what you can get to when there's that mix of a client who has a willingness to go there, and the coaching tools to be able to bring someone to that level.
Mm. And I hear you, the way you talked about helping her connect with her source of inspiration and aliveness. That, to me, that's the spiritual dimension, or one way to label something. A number of other guests on the podcast have talked about themes like that, which is terrific. If I could ask you, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but as you said, the client's willingness to go there and have this conversation about things that are deeper and more meaningful. How do you encourage leaders like this client to invite those conversations themselves within their teams to effectively lead others? And I wonder if you may have a story to share, or an approach about how. Well, first of all, I'm running an assumption, an inference, that it would be useful for a leader in a nonprofit organization to be able to hold space for similar conversations for those on her team. Perhaps that's not accurate, but that's my assumption, my experience. And if that's true, how do you support her to invite and open up those types of conversations?
Oh, what a beautiful question. So I think, the primary way that I support people in translating what they are learning through coaching, or what they are taking away from our coaching, to their teams, is actually to continue to be that, kind of put your oxygen mask on first, and really get to a place where you yourself feel like you are embodying and practicing what you're wanting to express to others, or what you want to awaken in others.
Hence your use of the Gandhi quotation.
Yes. The that's the one on my where I in my bio I said, yeah,
yes, being the change. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. If you want to change the world, start with yourself. Yes. So I always start there with people, because what I sometimes find is leaders will get too enthusiastic about wanting to, okay, how do I get my team to be more mindful? How do I get my team to pause and slow down? And I think many leaders underestimate the power of their own presence and energy, and the words that they use, and the way that they engage with their team, and how much that impacts things more than any deliberate strategy to infuse more meaning, something like that, right? It's really the embodiment of the leader, how they're showing up, how they're being, that creates curiosity maybe within their team. some interest, some intrigue, some like, oh, this executive is doing something a little different, even simple things like a lot of the work I do centers itself around this foundational principle that we need to quiet the noise in order to hear the more subtle whispers that come from within. And one very simple way that I encourage leaders to practice that is within meetings to practice honoring silence more. And so, like taking an extra pause before they speak, or taking an extra pause between different members of their team sharing something. And I think that, often people want this like fancy strategy, toolkit, checklist, and it's so much more powerful to start with those very simple ways of engaging day to day. How the leader speaks about their own sense of purpose and meaning to their team members, and then asks those questions back of, even the questions of like, what brought you joy today is a beautiful workplace appropriate question that I think if more leaders were engaging in that kind of dialogue with their team, like what made you grateful? What brought you joy today through your work? These are all touching into like that deeper part of what inspires and motivates.
Beautiful. And to me, that just hearing that question, if that question were directed to me, is very much, there's no noise present once that question appears in terms of quieting the noise. So it doesn't need to be silent, but it's a redirection to something deeper and more purposeful. And the noise and the static that I believe you were referring to when you talk about quieting the noise is nowhere in sight. When that question, when a question like what brought you joy today or fulfillment, when a question like that is presented, the noise is gone.
Yeah, it really like cuts to the heart of, that human to human piece, I think. And to know what brings someone else joy, I think it's just a beautiful way to engage and get to know someone at a deeper level. So yeah, it doesn't have to be, I think that's the big piece for me, is that spirituality doesn't have to be this big thing. You don't need a spirituality at work strategy, but there are subtle ways that you can bring your own sense of connection and purpose into how you engage with your team. Another I'll say tool, or I'll call it a strategy if I may, is I encourage leaders as they're stepping into their different responsibilities as they move through the day to practice considering not just what they're doing, but how they're being as they do the things. So this is something I learned from my time practicing yoga and also teaching yoga, is this practice of setting an intention. So, you're stepping onto your yoga mat, for example, and you're about to go through a sequence of movements that are planned by a teacher, but you're invited to set an intention for how you personally want to, be as you move through those movements. So today, my intention is like to be gentle, or to be fierce, or to be strong, whatever that intention is. So a lot of leaders I work with, I'll encourage them to use that same principle as they step into a meeting or a conversation. Like maybe you have your list of the things you want to accomplish, but how would it feel to pause for a moment and just think, how do I want to go about this? What's the energy that I want to bring to it? What's like the deep intention that I want to bring to it? And how does that tie back to my broader sense of meaning and fulfillment and purpose? And it can just make such a like slight but powerful shift for people.
Well, and if you ask me to do that, it's changing my focus. Perhaps I know for me, as a typical goal-oriented, especially in a male body, which is a whole other thing. Um, um, the intention is all about being, as opposed to the goal, which is like some result-oriented thing, right? The goal would be, I want to go through these movements faster than I did yesterday, or something like that, or a deeper bend, or something like that. The intention would be, what's the experience I want to have, or it could potentially, I suppose, be potentially the impact I want to have on others. Even would that be an example of an intention?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So you think of like I think of my own days in the corporate world, and this ties back beautifully to leadership, because I was starting on my spiritual journey in parallel with my time working in the corporate world. And what I noticed myself doing that I found really supportive actually is I would go into there was one particular meeting that I found quite boring that I attended every couple weeks. And each time I would go into it, once I realized I found it so boring, I was like, how how can I like set an intention for how I want to be in this meeting that is not bored? So I would set this intention, like one week it would be, my intention today is to bring some like levity to this meeting that maybe other people are finding boring too. Like I want to do that for myself, but I also want to do it for others. So if I see someone on my way in, I'm going to try to bring like a light energy to the conversation. I'm going to try to bring some lightness to whatever the dialogue is going around the boardroom table today. Like that's my intention, is to bring some levity. And then other times it was like, I want to bring some like challenge into this meeting today. I want to spice things up a little. I want to be a little like bold and say what's on my mind and not beat around the bush. And yeah, it definitely, in that experience with this meeting, that I was like, truly I never looked forward to it. I started to find, oh, now I kind of look forward to this thing, because it's like I get to decide how I want to be, how I want to engage with this experience.
Beautiful. And as I hear you talking about that, to me, that's a dimension of self-awareness, to even recognize that, oh, you know what, I know, I'm aware that I am bored in this meeting week after week, or I'm aware that I have been showing up a certain way, and I want to change the being level of how I'm appearing in this meeting or in this situation. So I think anytime we deliberately alter an intention or deliberately set an intention, we're it's to me a glaring example of a high level of self-awareness, that I'm looking at how I am showing up, and not just at the feeling level. It could be, what's the impact I'm having? It could be, how effectively am I presenting or influencing this group of people in a work setting or something. But um, I'm recognizing that that is something I can shift. It's something I will shift. And I'm taking the time. It is quieting to some extent. I think it is quieting the noise to some degree, because it's like, I'm not going to just keep getting swept up in presenting the way I always present. I'm going to take a moment here and say, okay, what's the impact I'm having, and how am I feeling? What's the experience I'm having, and how might I want to shift that? So if anybody says, self-awareness isn't practical, pay attention to what Rebecca's talking about.
Yes, and I love that, because as I was reflecting on, the benefits of spirituality, spiritual reflection, personal development, whatever you want to call it, the benefits of this in leadership, from my perspective, is really like the range you get access to as a leader. Like it widens your range, because the awareness of your tendencies and your, beliefs, your program behaviors increases. And then you start to have more freedom to choose. Like, here's how I want to use this skill today. I'm not tied to this skill just because I always have been recognized as being good at it. Like I can be organized, I can be chaotic, I can be on all ends of the spectrum, and I can kind of pick what the situation calls for, and also have more flexibility to respond to what I'm feeling too. So it's very powerful to have access to greater range. And I think it's through that looking inward that we gain that, and why there's such value in this inner work of leadership, now, given the increasing complexity of the world and the ability for leaders, or the necessity for leaders to be adaptable, to be able to really like dance in amidst the chaos and respond to what the situation requires.
Yeah, beautiful. And just to understand, for those listening, your work would be individual coaching. It would also, and does that also include teaching about mindfulness or mindfulness related topics in classroom sessions or workshops? Help us understand what you do.
Yes. Thank you for asking. And your timing is impeccable, because I'm actually pivoting my model a bit. So, where I'm currently focusing, or where I will be focusing going forward, is on a group one-on-one hybrid. So, a single program. It's called the Conscious Leaders Collective, and it's a community for leaders who are from various different organizations who have an interest in inner development work as leaders. And they come in and they receive the foundational trainings to help them quiet their mind, tune into their bodies, understand their nervous system. And then we also go into that work of developing a personalized plan that's grounded in some understanding of, we do an assessment to understand their competencies, their tendencies, their values, how they derive purpose, what their vision is for not just their organization, but for themselves and the type of leader that they want to be to help further the mission of their organization. And then we have peer group. So one-on-one coaching from time to time, but as well as peer groups where leaders are supporting one another. And the reason that I've pivoted to this model, whereas in the past I was doing more one-on-one coaching, is I've just so strongly come to see the value of peer-to-peer connection in this type of learning and development work. It's so powerful to be able to be in a confidential space with other leaders, talking about challenges and asking questions about, how do I make meaning of this challenge? Or how do I'm working on cultivating more self-compassion, and then looking around and seeing, CEO over here is also working on self-compassion. And I feel that too as, CFO from such and such organization. And to just have these connections really bolsters the journey. So I'm looking to create spaces to be able to foster more of that connection between leaders, and so excited to be doing more of that going forward.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And I appreciate that. So by the time people are in those peer-to-peer conversations, they've had some foundational learning about what this is and how it works. And here are some skills and how you do that, perhaps even the questions they can ask one another. So that by the time they're in this room, whether it's a virtual room or a real room, you've got some invested individuals who are working on themselves, who are interested in each other, and they can offer a perspective that would be a pretty special, talk about quieting the noise. It's like what's present in that room is an unusual and again, very practical, and almost, for lack of a better term, sacred space for engaging in these very important conversations.
Yes. And the other thing that's a bit unique about what I'm offering is that the duration of these peer groups is a year, but it could extend. People can opt in to extend it longer. And so there's this intention on my side to create something that's not like a revolving door. It's actually going to allow for some longer, more deep connections to form. And Yeah, I think it really meets a need in that I work with a lot of clients one-on-one who tell me they go back into their organizations, back into their contexts, and they can quickly drift from that sense of what we've uncovered and explored together in coaching. Because understandably, the demands of life and work are a lot. So I wanted to create this as kind of like an anchor point to help people continue to like come home to themselves and come home to what matters to them, and to know that they're not alone and that there are other people doing really highly demanding, high stress jobs, having massive impact on the world and on their employees and on the people they serve through their work, who are also prioritizing making this space to come home to themselves. And yeah, I'm delighted to be doing this work. For me, this is the work that I've long been looking forward to do with my life, and now I'm all in. I love it. It's so fulfilling.
Wonderful. That's beautiful. So where would people find you if this is something they were interested in learning more about?
LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me right now. I share a lot on there, and you can access my website through there. So I'm Rebecca Wilson Coaching is my tag on LinkedIn.
Got it. Perfect. So that's great if people want to find that. Beautiful. I appreciate your journey and how you're helping people in different settings. And it's interesting. I saw something recently, and maybe this is relevant here. I saw a quotation recently that time that you enjoy wasting is not wasted time.
Mm.
And I think so, and I love that. It made me smile and kind of nod. And I think similarly too, time that you enjoy working super hard, putting our heads down and grinding out something and just kind of plowing through some hard piece of work is not necessarily burdensome, hard, stressful work. It's hard work, but it's fulfilling, it's rewarding. And I hear a little bit of that in some of the clients you're describing. Right. It's not about backing off of having that sort of an impact or working less hard, but more about not having it be hard.
Yes. Yeah. It's like when you tap into that place of purpose and meaning in a really felt way, and you keep coming home to that, it's like you're tapping into this new fuel source that's more sustainable somehow. And yeah. It's powerful. It's powerful stuff.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing about your work.
Thank you.
And people can go to Rebecca Wilson Coaching if they have questions. And I look forward to listening back to this podcast to hearing about some of the suggestions and approaches you're talking about. And thank you. Thank you for being part of the discussion.
Thank you so much, Andrew. This has been awesome. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Spirituality and Leadership. If you want to access this wealth of knowledge and insight on a regular basis, subscribe to the show. Join the network of leaders who want to do and be better. Visit the site at spiritualityandleadership.com to catch all the episodes and learn more. Until next time, take good care of yourself.